On today's Roll for Crit preview, we are looking at Head for Glory, which is on Kickstarter now. In this game, Caesar has died, and it's now time to choose a new emperor. You want to be that new emperor, but in order to do so, you're going to have to fight in the pit. In addition, there's another weird twist. You must prove that you are pure, and to do so, you must separate yourself from yourself. In other words, take off your head. But while you're fighting, you'll be attaching different heads to your body and eventually gaining Caesar's head. And you'll work your way up the stairs in order to rekindle the hearth. If you are the first to do so, you are the one who is worthy to become the next emperor.
It's a worthy goal and will be a challenge to get there. Each player will start the game with a head on their player board, and each head has its own special power that will affect exactly how you play the game. Might help you with attacking, healing, all kinds of crazy different abilities. You're also going to have a set of attributes, as you can see, that range from defense, movement, attack, whether it's melee or ranged attacks, and depending on how far along those are marked by these cubes, that will tell you how powerful you are in them, as well as a couple other things. And of course, you've got your health down here when you die. We'll get to that a little bit later. Now, on your turn, you're going to start off by being able to spend favor tokens that you'll be receiving in various ways throughout the game. You can use these either to raise one of these attributes. Now, it costs the amount printed, so to raise this range here, that would cost 2 favor tokens, but if I wanted to make the strength stat go up, the melee strength stat, that would take 6 favor tokens. So it gets harder and harder the further that you go. You could also spend some to draw some cards to your hand. Cards have various abilities that can be played at various times of the game. The next thing that you do on your turn, you can take a move action. Movement is pretty simple. It's based on your movement score. So in this case, this player can move 3 spaces. You simply move across the hexes adjacent one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, however you want to move. Then often you're going to be making an attack. So if you're making a melee attack, you want to be right next to the other player, and you roll a number of dice equal to your melee stats. In this case, 6 dice. That can be a lot. They do get to block, they get to defend themselves by rolling a number of dice equal to their defense stat. Depending on what the difference is, that tells you how much damage that you do to them. You carry that out in their health tracker here. You can see there's some points here where if you cross over them, you'll be rewarded with some favor tokens. So that's another great way to get those, and another great way to hurt your opponents. Ranged attacks work similarly, but of course, you can be further away from the person. Now you do have to be in a straight line on the board. So if this person were here, they can't see this player anymore. There's also some obstacles in the way that block line of sight. Otherwise, it's pretty simple. You can do it from as far away as you want. And in fact, for each space between you and the other player, you're going to get an extra focus die. They're not quite as good as a regular D6, but they'll give you a little more bang for your buck. You can also see there are those red rage dice over there. You get those for successfully carrying out a melee attack, and you can store up to 3 on your board, and on future melee attacks, you can add 1 or more of those. They're a little bit more powerful than the black focus dice, and again, they'll add more bang to your attacks. Now you'll also notice these fountain spaces on the board. That's another important thing. If you enter one of these spaces or start your turn on one, you'll get a number of favor tokens equal to the number that is shown depending on what stat that is. So for example, right here, this is a defense symbol. That means you look at your board, you've passed this mark right here, so you're going to get 2 favor tokens. If it were over here, if it were a movement symbol, you'd only get 1. That's the default that you get. So you really want to take advantage of those spots while also worrying about your positioning in regards to your opponents as to whether you want to attack them or avoid them.
Now, as the game progresses, you'll play 5 rounds just doing exactly that. But once you hit the 5th round, that's when we start hitting the end game. First person who decapitates someone will receive Caesar's head, as well as move up on this track, like so. With Caesar's head, you will have the chance to move up on this track. Should you start the turn with it, you get to move up again. Should you decapitate someone who's holding Caesar's head, you get to move up on the track. You will continue this until you reach the end. Whoever hits that first is the winner. Now let's actually get into decapitation. Should your life hit 0, I'll put Caesar's head back there. First off, whoever decapitated gets 2 favor points, so that's a reward for them. You are now headless. You'll be like this. You cannot attack, but no one can attack you. And at the end of your next turn, you will choose a new head. So let's say this was your head before. You can't choose that, but you can choose any of the rest, and you could get that later if you get decapitated again. And you will add it to your board. New ability with new stats. which means a whole new way to fight people. The one last thing we need to talk about are these cards. You'll start with some in the beginning, but you can spend a favor to draw from either of these decks. One is designed specifically for melee attacks, one for ranged, and one for either movement and defense. It's a bit more of your tricky stuff. Either way, the cards tend to look like this. There will be an image. Remember, this is a prototype. Judging on here, you'll notice there's a 1 and a 2. Should your stat hit there, like here, it does not hit, so he can only use the 1. But if this was a range 1, he could use the 2. That crown on the bottom is reserved for Caesar's head. So Caesar also gives you really strong card abilities as well. Other than that, it's just rinse and repeat. Lose your head, gain your head, get Caesar's head, and be the one to rekindle the hearth.
It is definitely a wacky, interesting concept that I will guess you have never seen quite this way in a board game before.
In a board game, but weirdly enough, Transformers did it with their headmasters. So
of course,
I was like,
Transformers did it too. But you know, they're robots. These are men. These are human beings. But you don't need to worry about the explanation for it all. You can decide for yourself how this science works exactly, whether it's magic or what have you. But that is a really interesting part of it, obviously, because your abilities are changing throughout the game. Another side effect of that is that once you're dead, you're not out of the game. You know, it doesn't feel as punishing to be dead. You lose a turn and it definitely could hurt you, but your stats will stay the same. All the stuff that you've worked for is the same, and then you get to come back in with potentially something even more powerful. I think that's the interesting hook to this game, is frequently changing up your strategy based on those heads.
Yeah, and it's very easy to, if you see someone who's getting a bit ahead, you can gang up on that person as well. This game is for 3 to 4 players. We didn't actually go too much into it, but we said you roll dice. It's pretty much you just add up the numbers and subtract, which makes it very simple. It's not actually too complicated. And at first we were really shocked about the range, being able to add a lot of dice potentially. But it turns out it's actually very hard to get a straight line sometimes. You can sort of predict how people are going to move and stay in here, or I really love a card in here. You actually can take a barrier and drop it somewhere. So if you know you were going to hang around here, like, nope, I'm making this harder.
Again, we want to let you know that this is a prototype. Not all these components are final. And in addition, these player boards with the dual layers here, that's a stretch goal. So we'll see if that ends up in the final game or not. But they are also, of course, helpful. It's always nice to have your cubes not flying all over the place.
I mean, honestly, any board game that does anything like this, where you put cubes on a sheet, really need to think about, making this double layer insert. There's a reason why the terraforming Mars, those game trays became such a popular item.
Yes, it's nice. You don't want to have to worry about someone sneezing and everything blowing off the table. So if you're looking for a competitive multiplayer game that, I'd say has some familiar elements in terms of traveling around hexes and playing cards and rolling dice to attack each other, but with some pretty cool, weird twists to it as well. You like this theme added on top of it, then take a look at Head for Glory. We will have the link in the description right down below. There should be a couple weeks left at the time that we're putting this video out. And let us know in the comments section what you think and how your head is doing these days. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was a Roll for Crit preview.
Here's an idea. Support our Patreon or like and subscribe to this channel for more.
Subscribing gives you a +2 to your charisma stat.